Hi, in this video, I'm going to be telling you about carers, over 20 carers who were all recruited by one UK employer. These carers have all had their certificate of sponsorship revoked. They have had their UK visas cancelled and they have been given two options. Option one is to leave the UK immediately, and option two, yes, option two is that they've got 60 days to find another UK employer that will offer them a new certificate of sponsorship. They have to apply for a new visa within 60 days. So basically, this is a situation that you don't want to find yourself in this situation. So you want to watch this video till the very end, whether you're a carer in the UK already, or you're somebody who is still out of the UK intending to move to the UK, through this carer pathway, or you're just, a friend, a colleague, or a well-wisher. Do make sure that you share this video with your contacts who are in the UK or coming to the UK through this pathway, because there's a lot going on which I would like you to know. So basically what happened? So what happened was that this particular UK employer was recruiting carers, overseas carers. So basically, to recruit overseas carers, just to put this into perspective, a UK employer needs to have a sponsorship license. So a sponsorship license is when you apply through the immigration services to get permission to be able to recruit people from overseas, because not every UK company has this access or this permission or this privilege to recruit people from overseas, which is why sometimes, if you've noticed, some of the recruiters, when they advertise their jobs, they will say you have to be in the UK, or they don't offer certificate of sponsorship. It's likely because they haven't got that sponsorship license to be able to issue this certificate of sponsorship. So the employers that do have the license obviously is issued by the Home Office, which is the UK Immigration Service. So once you have that license, there are many strict rules that you have to abide by in order to maintain the license. And this is where the challenge arises, because with the carer pathway, before now, carers were not really able to come to the UK through this particular pathway, to have a sponsorship visa. But the carer job was added to the shortage occupation list to enable employers to be able to recruit from overseas. And that's because the carer job, the pay is quite low. It's about £20,000 per year, which means that it doesn't really qualify for the 25,000 to get a sponsorship visa, really. So that's why it was added. And in case you're wondering actually about vacancies, if you're still out and you're thinking, oh my god, can I still travel? Yes, you can, because there are over 160,000 jobs right now as we speak in health and social care in the UK. Although most of these vacancies are for nursing positions, there are also thousands of these for carer jobs. So yes, they're still very much so recruiting, and yes, carers are still needed in the UK. But I'm going to tell you what you need to look out for. So the first thing is that these particular carers that have had their visa cancelled, when they were coming to the UK, they chose an employer, or this particular employer that brought them to the UK was charging, to bring the carers. Some of the carers are saying that they paid £7,000. Others are saying they paid £10,000. Some people have actually said that they paid, in excess of £15,000 to this particular employer to be able to get recruited by them to come to the UK. Obviously, this is illegal, because if you have that sponsorship license, it's illegal to charge overseas candidates for the cost of the sponsorship license itself, which means that if a UK employer is recruiting you, you should not be paying for the certificate of sponsorship. And because this is illegal, if the Home Office, which is the UK Immigration Services, if they get to find out that you are paying, then that employer's license can then get revoked, which means that this is what happened to this particular employer. Obviously, I'm not sure about the circumstances that led to the immigration services finding out, but most of the time somebody either reports, it could be anybody, because if anybody is aware of such a practice, they can report. And you want to keep watching this video, because I'm going to tell you what you need to do to safeguard yourself from these situations. How do you go about finding a job in the UK? Or if you've already got a job, how do you go about compacting yourself, carrying yourself, making sure that you're practicing safely? Because I'm going to tell you that most of the times it's not necessarily because you as an individual have done something that they get to find out, but it's because it happened to someone else within the same company. That company then gets investigated, and then all the people that were recruited through that particular employer would then get sanctioned. So it doesn't mean that it has to be you, you've done something wrong. No, it's about that, that particular employer. If the home office finds out about any wrongdoing, every single person that has been recruited through that company is going to get into trouble. So, and you need to know that if you're having to pay a UK employer to move to the UK, they're probably not charging just you, they're charging other people as well. It means that your fellow carers that you're working with, once you get to the UK, or those that are trying to get to the UK through that company, they're likely also having to pay that money. So you don't know, the circumstances that different people are going through. So you're putting yourself in a very risky situation. And yes, while I understand that this may seem like something really urgent, you want to move to the UK right now, immediately, instantly, as soon as possible. But look, you need to do your due diligence. You need to make sure that you're applying for jobs legally and through the right channels and through the right processes. Very, very important. Because once you get here, if, like I was saying, if something happens to one of those people in the company, it's going to affect you as well, even though you were not the person originally involved within that particular thing. Like in this case now, obviously an investigation was carried out, and they found that many of those carers didn't actually have any experience, even though they had said, they had said in their CVs, for example, that they were all experienced carers. Let me tell you something. If you do a course online, that is not the same as having care experience. If you do a course online, because I see people saying, oh, Melvis, I've got all the requirements, I've done this course, I've done this one, I've done this one. It is not the same as having care experience. Care experience means that you've worked in the care industry. And if you have worked for a month, you cannot call yourself an experienced carer. So these are some of the things that you need to be looking at. These are some of the things that when you're doing your CV, you need to be very vigilant. You need to be honest. You need to be realistic. You need to be factual. You need to be truthful. Because what happens is that many of these employers that are taking money from people, obviously they're not following the due process. Because when you're interviewing candidates through a legit, if you're a legit UK employer, once you shortlist people, you're going to look at the CVs, aren't you? You have a look at the CVs. You say, oh, this is Melvis. How much experience does Melvis have? Does she work in a hospital? Does she work in a nursing home? Has she done any voluntary work? Those are the things that are going to be looked at. And so employers that are recruiting genuinely, they go through the real processes because they are having to go through, the interview process and shortlisting candidates and really trying to sieve out the best people, talking to you to find out your experience. But if you're simply paying to come to the UK, that employer is not going to follow those things. And they don't also have that trail for an audit, because many of them don't have the trail. In fact, recently there was a nurse actually who owns a care agency here in the UK. That nurse was actually suspended by the NMC because it was found that this nurse was recruiting carers that are untrained. Carers were working that didn't have the right training. You need to know that this is a delicate job. You're dealing with excuse me, you're dealing with human beings. You're caring for people. You need to put yourself in the shoes of those people. If it was your mom, your uncle, your auntie, your son, your husband, your wife, your loved one, your neighbor, how would you want the carer treating that person to be? Would you like them to be trained? Would you like them to have no experience? Would you like them not to know what the processes are? Would you like them to come and offer complex care? Because some of these patients that the carers are having to care for, they have really complex needs. Yes, everybody can learn. Everybody does not always have to have experience before they start, but you need to make sure that you're honest about your presentation, how you present yourself. You need to make sure your CV is honest. You need to make sure that you're looking for an employer that is legit, an employer that is following due process, that is doing the right thing. Because yes, you may move to the UK quicker by paying somebody illegally to do so, but the truth is that once you get here, you're always at risk. You're always at risk because you don't know when something is going to go wrong and you're going to get caught up in this situation like these carers have been. It wasn't something that they knew about or they were expecting, but all of them have had their certificate of sponsorship, revoked and their UK visas cancelled. Can you imagine how they are feeling? I spoke to one of these carers and she's completely shattered. So you need to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. If you don't have experience, it doesn't mean that you cannot move to the UK as a carer. You can still move as a carer if you've got no experience. Like if, for example, you were a teacher or an accountant or, something else before. But you need to make sure that you get some experience. You need to make sure that you get some voluntary work in there. You can go to your hospital, you can go to a health center, you can, there are so many ways that you can get experience. In all countries in the world, there's no hospital that doesn't do volunteering, or a hospital that could do with an extra pair of hands. Or even just a health center to go there and say, look, I just want to be here maybe for a month or so to observe what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but you need to make sure that you're following due process, because these carers now, they have been told you need to leave the UK, immediately, or we're giving you 60 days, which is 2 months, to find a new employer in the UK and move to. And I can tell you that if you're an employer, I'm going to ask you this, if you were an employer in the UK and you find these people who have, had these visas cancelled and all that, would you want to employ them? Knowing the circumstances that they're coming from, would you want to employ these people? And this is a challenge that these carers are now facing, because it's not easy then to find another employer and be like, oh, I need to do everything right now, because of XYZ. Many of the employers will be like, well, actually, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved, because if you haven't come initially through the due process, actually, I just want to stay out. I just want to stay out of this and rather recruit students. Because look, there are many students that are, working as carers when they come to the UK. And this is what I normally recommend. What I would say to you is, yes, you may have the money. If you do have that money, the best thing to do is come as a student. For me, that's the best thing. Because if you're coming to the UK as a student, there are so many advantages. And I'm going to give you a few. First, you're going to be entitled to, obviously, the healthcare. So if you're unwell, you go to the hospital. You don't need to pay because you're a student in the UK. So you have free healthcare at the point of use, which is such a good privilege, which is such a huge advantage that you have, studying here. So that's the first advantage. The second advantage is that you can bring your family. So if you've got children, you've got a husband, you've got a wife that you want to bring to the UK, you can't bring them if you're coming as a student. You can't do that. And then also, if you're having to pay somebody £10,000 to come to the UK as a carer, you can use that money to apply for like a nursing course, for example. Many of the people that are coming to the UK through this carer pathway are degree holders. Most of the people have a degree. If you already have a degree in any subject, you can study nursing for only 2 years in the UK to become a qualified nurse. And if you study nursing through this particular pathway, you don't even need to do any NMC registration. You automatically get registered with the NMC by your university or through your university on successful completion of your course. This is my own recommendation. If you've got the money, rather than pay to come as a carer and find yourself in all sorts of entanglements, in all sorts of unrest, because you don't know what's going to happen. If all of this is found out, like you end up with these, poor carers who are now stranded in this country, I would rather, come as a student if I had the money, rather than pay to come as a carer. Because when you're coming as a carer, obviously if you're earning £20,000 and you're working all these hours and paying, 10,000 to come, just use that money, pay for a university for 1 year, and then use that time to work as a carer, because you can also work while you're studying as a student. You work as a carer to build up your, your experience, your CV, so that by the time you're qualifying from your nursing degree, you automatically register with the NMC. You don't need to do ART, you don't need to do OET, you don't need to do OSCEs, you do absolutely nothing. It is such a good pathway to use. So please, you want to make sure that you're vigilant. Yes, like I say, you may have the money, and most people are having to take loans for this money. Yes, university in the UK is expensive. I know some of the universities that are about £13,000. If this is something you're struggling with, you can contact me. I have a private coaching program where I support nurses, carers, student nurses with career progression in the UK. So if you're already in the UK and you're a carer and you're wanting to progress into any other position, change your jobs, progress into nursing, I can sit with you, look at all your experience, your personal circumstances, and we'll get the best pathway for you to become a nurse in the UK or midwife or whatever, medicine you want to become. But the reality of it is that there are so many different pathways that you need to look for what's best for your personal circumstances if you're already in the UK. But if you're out of the UK and you've got the money, I strongly recommend that you come maybe as a student. It's safer, it's better, it's more productive, because you're paying that money, you're going to have a degree at the end of it, which is so incredible for you at the end of the day. You don't want to come to this country as a new, adapting. It's really challenging when you're adapting. So you need to be honest. Another case that I'm going to talk to you about right now is I know somebody who recruits carers. She has contracts for domiciliary care, so she's a legit, she doesn't charge anything for sponsorship, she doesn't charge her carers. In fact, she's quite a good employer. She follows the law and all of that. So what she does is she only recruits carers that have like a driving license, because her contract that she's got for domiciliary care is in really rural areas, which means that you need to drive from one patient to another. So what she does is she will say, look, when she advertises her jobs, she'll say you must have a driving license. So she recently did a recruitment drive, and 2 carers moved to the UK from Africa, and when they got here, they couldn't drive, but they had presented a driving license that they had. This is an example of an employer that is legit, of an employer that is real, of an employer that is following the law, and that is really treating her carers with the utmost dignity, respect, and concern that they should have. So she doesn't charge for, any things that are illegal, costs, and all of that. So what she did then, rightfully so, for her, she's withdrew the certificate of sponsorship from those carers, because she said to them, look, I recruited you because you could drive. Obviously, driving is not a skill that you're going to be like, oh, can I see you driving and all that? No, you need the evidence and the word from that person, which they did present driving licenses, like I'm saying. But when they got to the UK, none of these 2 carers could not drive. So she's had to revoke the certificate of sponsorship, because if an employer can also take back that certificate of sponsorship even when you're already in the UK. They can do, especially if you come under false pretenses and you don't have the requirements that they needed. Like this lady I'm talking about, all her carers need to drive because of how the job is, because of the sort of contracts that she has and the places that she covers. So she withdrew that, and she said to them, look, you need to find another job, or you leave the UK. Because it's that honesty. You need to be honest. If you don't have experience, be forthcoming about it. Get some voluntary work in there. If you're a teacher, you're an accountant, you don't need to say that you've got 5 years of care experience, because if you come to the UK and they're doing those audits and they find out that that's not true, people get into a lot of trouble. And that is not the situation in which you want to find yourself, that you're already here and then you end up deported or you end up as an illegal immigrant. Look, it's not easy. You may be thinking, oh, it's better to be an illegal immigrant in the UK than to be back home. But you don't want to be in this situation, because you've got employers that are genuine, you've got employers that are recruiting for real, you've got employers that apply. Be patient, follow the due process. I tell the carers who are part of my coaching program, you need to be patient with the process, because you're applying normally through the legal channels, through the normal process. It's going to take how long it's going to take. Yes, you want to move to the UK today, right now, as soon as possible. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you're doing that the right way. You're following the proper channels. You're following the real pathways. Again, talking about this, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do make sure that you hit subscribe, turn on the notification button, because you want to be the first to be notified when I drop a new video. And this channel is all about career progression in the UK, how you can move to the UK safely, in a legit way. Then if you're already in the UK, I'm really passionate about what happens next. Yes, you're in the UK, but then so what? But then what next? You need to be progressing, you need to be excelling, you need to thrive in your career. And that is what I'm really interested in, because I also moved to the UK in 2011. I was working as a band 1 carer and studying as a student nurse. So I studied as an international student. So I understand the urgency that we can sometimes have if we're trying to travel. I do understand that. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you're doing things properly. You need to make sure that you're not putting yourself and your family in danger. Because many of these carers that are now having to return home, they have come with their families, they've got their families with them. There's one of the carers, she's got 4 kids and her husband. So, and obviously this affects all of them, because if you're the main visa holder, if you're the main person that has had the job, and your dependents come under you, if you have a problem with your visa, it's going to affect all of them as well, because their visa depends on you having yours. And that's why the visas always expire at the same time. If yours is revoked, they are not going to have visas as well. So you really want to be careful how you're coming. And if you've got money and you're thinking, oh, I've got a lot of money, come as a student. Again, I can support you with this journey if this is something that you're thinking, oh, how do I even get started? It is much safer coming as a student than coming through these means, not because of any other reason, but because if this particular company is doing anything wrong, you are going to be caught up in it as well. Even if you come legally through them, you're going to be caught up, because this particular employer has literally had the license revoked, which means that they are canceling the certificate of sponsorship for everybody that they have recruited, all of them. It doesn't matter whether you paid money, you didn't pay, all of you get cancelled. And this is not a good, this is just not a good situation to find yourself in. So if you are doing your CV, you're writing your personal statement, you're talking about your experience, please, you need to be realistic. You need to have realistic expectations. You need to think about consequences of what you're doing. Because in the UK, the rules are quite strict. The laws are very, very strict. And if you're found out, it's not going to be something that they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's okay, you're already in the UK. No, it's going to get, cancelled, and your course is going to be revoked. And you really don't want to find yourself in this situation. So do share this with friends and family, loved ones who are already in the UK through this pathway, or who are still planning to come, especially so that they can do so legally. Yes, it may take some time, but they always say everybody's got their own time. If it's something that is going to be, it's going to be. Whether it's in 2022 or it's 2023, it's still going to happen. I actually had somebody contact me yesterday saying to me, oh, Melvis, I would like to join your coaching program. Can you guarantee me that I'm going to get a job within, 4 weeks? I was like, I cannot guarantee that, because I don't know who is recruiting when you join and all of that, because it depends on who is actually recruiting. And I'm very keen that people are applying for jobs legally through the normal channels, through employers, because when you come through these employers, the treatment that you get, because they're following the rules, they tend to be better employers as well. Those same employers that are going to charge you that amount of money to come, most of the times, they are the hellish employers that you're going to have when you get here. You'll be working 90 hours a week and having 40 hours unpaid. So you need to be careful. You need to watch out. You need to make sure that you're on your guard all the time. Make sure that you know what the laws are. And talking about the laws, are employers allowed to charge candidates for anything at all? The reality is that employers are not allowed to charge candidates for the cost of the certificate of sponsorship, but there is a but. Employers are allowed to legally charge candidates or take the money back that they've spent on things like flight tickets, things like visa fees, things like accommodation in the UK. For example, your employer can organize 3 months worth of accommodation. If they want to, they can charge you for that accommodation, but they cannot do that in arrears. They have to tell you upfront in advance, before you ever get to the UK. They have to say to you, look, Melvis, we're going to pay for your first 3 months of accommodation. It's going to be £200 per month. So in total, that's going to be £600 for 3 months. But we're going to charge you that money back over a period of 1 year, and then you sign. So that has to be done before they can do that. So it is a legal thing that employers can do if they want to. I'm not saying they have to, but I'm saying that they can charge you back for that money if they want to. It is legal to do so. It's like flight tickets. If your employer has paid your flight ticket to come to the UK, it has to be agreed with you in advance, and you need to know how much it is and how the payment plan is going to be. Obviously, it is not, it is not a comfortable situation to have a candidate charge all the money back in the first 2-3 months and then leave the carer without any money at all. Some employers have had to do that. That is so ethically and morally wrong. So the best thing is, if you want to charge the money back, spread it over a period of time. That is legal to do. The thing that is not legal to charge is the certificate of sponsorship. It's not legal for a UK employer to charge candidates that. And so when you're charging 7,000, you cannot justify why you're charging a candidate £7,000 for a flight ticket, for example, because it is, if you were offering like a service, it's different. But because they're coming to work for you, you're then not able to justify that amount of money. So that is where the problem lies. So yes, it is legal to charge candidates for the cost of flight tickets, cost of accommodation, cost of visa fees, if the employer chooses to. Some employers choose to charge that money back, which is fine. Some employers choose not to. So you just need to make sure that as a carer, you're aware of what these rules are, because like I say, the law does not pardon any ignorance. Once you're found out, once you're caught up, you're going to cut up in that web of lies. Because look, when the Home Office is doing audits, they will come and they can speak to the staff. They can speak to the staff, they can interview you and say to you, oh, Melvis, what's your experience? How long have you worked here? Have you worked in care before? All of that. And if they have to investigate and find out that, oh, in Africa, I was an accountant, for example, and I just literally resigned from my job one day before I moved to the UK. Yet I've got on my CV that I've got 5 years of experience working in a hospital as a carer. Well, that's going to be evidence that there's something not right there. And then everybody is going to get their visas cancelled. So please, you want to really be vigilant. You need to make sure you're doing due process. You need to make sure that, yes, you want to move now. Yes, you want to, please, very, very important. If you've got the money, come as a student. Find another pathway. Be patient with the process. It can take time. I understand how frustrating it can be. I know that, you're thinking, oh my God, let me just move now while I can. What if things change? But there are always pathways that you can move to the UK in a way that is legal, in a way that is legit, in a way that safeguards you and your family especially, and in a way that is not going to put you into a lot of trouble once you get to this country. So again, thank you for watching till this point. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. And I want you to leave a comment below and say, Melvis, I will implement this. Whether you're already here or you're still to come, you will make sure that you're finding the legit employers. You make sure that you are the best version of yourself that you can be. Very, very important. So please look out for these employers. If you're already in the UK and you've come through one of these employers, just make sure you're on your guard. Make sure you're on your guard, because you don't know what can happen from one day to another. If anything goes wrong, you are going to get caught up as well. So please, and remember that you can always change your jobs once you're in the UK. You can change jobs. It's not illegal for you to do so. The only thing is that if you're changing your job, you need to find another person that offers visa sponsorship as well. Because obviously, if you don't have indefinite leave to remain, which you're going to be in the UK at least for 5 years before you can have that, you will need to find another employer that has sponsorship. But I think that rather than get caught up in a web of entanglement, lies, and deceit, it's best for you to do that. And again, if you've got money, come as a student. Just come and study. You will become a nurse in a smooth way. And tuition fees you can pay instrumentally, because it's something that people worry about as well. They say to me, oh, Melvis, if I pay this 10,000, or I'm just gonna have my no. If you're studying, you can pay instrumentally. I don't know any UK university that says to students you must pay all your fees upfront. It's a lot of money. They acknowledge that as well. So they can give you installments to pay. You can pay once every 3 months, or you can set up a payment plan with a university. They are quite flexible, because these tuition fees, that's a lot of money. And I can assure you that if you plan yourself well, you will successfully go through the 2-year program. If you've already got the 10,000, for example, to pay for year 1 upfront, so rather than say paying to come as a carer, you can use it to pay your tuition fees for the first year upfront. Then when you get to the UK, obviously you can work as a student. And if you've got any sort of family support, that really helps as well. There are also different types of scholarships that the universities give to their students that you can also always apply for. For example, many universities have like a vice chancellor scholarship, where if you are studying, if you're the best student for the year, for example, you can get £2,000. It's just like motivation and encouragement for those students that are really high performers and that are thriving and taking up the flag of the university. So If you're an international student, you can thrive to get some of these scholarships here and there. They are going to add up over time. And if your degree is only 2 years and you've paid for the first year, you'll see that all of that will add up and you'll be able to successfully complete your course rather than coming as a carer and ending up in all these webs. And also, while you're a student, you can work as a carer and earn money through that way. During holiday times, you can work full time, which is really, really, really good. So there are different ways really that you can move to the UK. Yes, the career pathway has been very, very good. Even me, I really welcome it. It's given many opportunities for many of us and many of our people and many people that would not have otherwise had this opportunity. But you do need to be careful when you're having to pay, because you're always at risk. If anything does go wrong, you're going to be caught up in all of that web and you're going to end up with your visa being cancelled. Please, you don't really want that to happen. And again, do make sure that if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe, turn on that notification button, because you want to be the first to be notified when I drop a new video. Like I said, I'm very heavily invested and interested in career progression. Yes, you're in the UK now, so what? Yes, you want to come to the UK. What is the best pathway? Because sometimes coming through this career pathway may not be the best thing for you. There are other pathways that are currently ongoing and other pathways that are also in progress to be started really soon. So I'm going to be keeping you updated, especially if you've obviously subscribed to the channel. I'll be keeping you updated about all those pathways. I'll be telling you when those jobs open, because obviously since Brexit, there are over 2 million vacancies right now in the catering and hospitality industry. So the government obviously is planning to add those jobs to the shortage occupation list so that companies and UK companies and employers can recruit staff overseas to fill these vacancies. He's working in places like hotels, cleaners, harvesting fruits, working in bars, in pubs, in nightclubs. So that's just really the catering and hospitality industry. So if this is something that you're keen on, it's really good to keep an eye, because then you don't need to come as a carer if you don't have experience or if you're not really keen on care, because it's a sector that for me you've got to be passionate about what you're doing, because you're caring for people when they are most vulnerable. You don't want to put those people at risk. You don't want to put yourself at risk as well. So please make sure that you're doing your due diligence. These poor carers now that are having to return to Africa, return to Asia, return to Europe or wherever they've come from, it's not easy for them, because getting that physical sponsorship under such pressure or tight time and it's not a situation that you want to find yourself in. And do contact me, obviously, if you've got any issues, you've got any challenges, you've got any questions that you want to ask, leave them in the comment section below. Obviously, I'll join you down there just to make sure that I get your questions answered. If you need that one-to-one support, then obviously you can consider joining my coaching and mentorship program. And that is where I actually give personalized support, because then I can get to know you. We can talk further. You can also listen to other members of the program. We've got people who came as carers, who are working as carers, transitioning from carers to nurses or other healthcare professions, because you don't always have to progress into nursing if you're a carer. Most people do, but there are other, if you're interested in healthcare, there are many other healthcare professions that you may want to consider growing within that sector as well. So it's not just developing as a nurse. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, but Melvis, I don't want to do nursing even though I'm working as a carer, that's still absolutely fine. Because there are many pathways, but it's just that we need to look at your personal circumstances and be able to decide, to help you, because it's not saying you need to study this. It's just having that conversation with you to help you talk about the pathways that are available, talk about, some options that you may not have even thought about, or you may not even be aware that they exist, so that you can begin to think differently. You can look at what's best for your personal circumstances. So that's what the point is. So, but if you've got any generic questions or just a quick thing that I want to know more about, just leave it in the comment section. And I want to see that Melvis I will implement, because I'll hold you accountable. I'll be able to come and say, look, you promised you were going to be doing this. It's already 3 months. What have you done so far? Because accountability is something that is so important. It's so vital if you're going to succeed, if you're going to excel, if you're going to achieve your goals. So please watch out. If you're watching this and you're a recruiter or you're an employer, please make sure you're doing the right thing. Make sure that you're not putting these people at risk. Make sure that you're not leaving people stranded when they get to the UK and they are having to have their visas revoked. legal sponsorship revoked and visas cancelled, because it's very distressing for people, especially if you've got a family, you've got young children, you've got a husband, you've got a wife, you're trying to settle in, and then all of this disruption comes up. So please do make sure that you warn your contacts, you let them know about this, so they don't end up in such a risky situation and end up being deported or being asked to leave the UK, because it is not a pleasant situation. You want to be honest as a candidate as well on your CV, because if you're having a legit employer who is doing the right thing, they can also revoke your certificate of sponsorship if they find out that you had lied. If they find out that you were not saying the truth, they can actually revoke that, and you will have to go back to where you've come from, wherever that is, or you have to find another employer within a very short period of time, which can be very, very, very difficult, challenging, and stressful. So again, make sure that you keep watching all the videos in the channel. I've done videos about the best carer jobs in the UK, what jobs to apply for instead of carer jobs if it's something that you're not keen on. Scholarships as well, how to study in the UK for free. Because again, these are opportunities that you need to excel in this country. How can you study for free? There's a video about studying at Oxford University. That's a world-class university. How can you study there for free? So again, leave any comments below, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your contacts, and keep watching the videos.